Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and I feel like this is a good way to start off this video. 2025 NFL Draft Order. So one thing we're good at as a team, we're also good at not scoring in the red zone, I've heard. But yeah, another loss. Are we, excuse my coughing, are we shocked we're here? A little bit, right? But I think at this point we're getting pretty used to these each week. Jacksonville falls to the Houston Texans 24-20, held the lead for the vast majority of this game. It actually looked like they might win. It was surprising. I didn't know they could do that still. But as they have done all year, they get to the end, they have a chance, no one steps up, and they lose. Over and over and over and over. That's what they're good at, except for Buffalo. They made sure to take care of that one pretty quick, which was nice because I got to go to bed a little bit earlier than expected that night. But getting into my notes, first thing I'll say, it's just hard to really want to analyze and sorry, my cough is awful. You're gonna have to deal with it, but I'll try to get through this. It's hard to want to analyze this team right now. It's hard to want to even talk about individual player performances. We're still going to do it, especially because this game was at least close. But the problems are very clearly big, right? It kind of comes down to me right now, four different things. I'm not saying there are not other people that are part of problems. We'll make that very clear. But it's Shad Khan allowing this to happen. It's Trent Baalke for being allowed to be a terrible GM on this team for so long. Doug Pederson for just being a moron at this point. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. And then Trevor Lawrence for getting paid $55 million a year and not even looking average. We'll get into that all. But those are your big problems, right? And two of those are probably going to be gone very soon. Doug Pederson, Trent Baalke. You don't have a choice with Shad Khan, and you don't have a choice anymore with Trevor Lawrence. Not saying I would go trade him tomorrow if I could. But obviously at this point, regardless of what we want, regardless of what the Clemson product was and all that stuff, and regardless of the awesome throw we get once a game usually, although I don't think we got it this week, Trevor Lawrence has not been good. Simply put, not been good at all. Talking about him, another uninspiring day. The only good thing I have to note here, he threw more than one touchdown. That's exciting. No interceptions. That's good. I know there was one play where he was almost intercepted. So there's also that too. But other than that, 169 yards passing. I mean, somehow this isn't the worst performance you've had all year as far as passing. We did have one game where he threw 16 yards in the first half until the last moments, I think, of that quarter, the second quarter. One of the most surprising stats that I have noticed, I will pull this up for you, although we do not have the fourth game in PFF yet, since I'm recording this on Sunday night. So comparing him to 2021, a lot of people want to talk about drops, right? Drops are like crazy with this team, and that's true. Drops are a big problem. If we look back at adjusted completion rate, so this is taking into account catches that should have been caught. Trevor Lawrence in 2024 is over 6% lower than he was in his rookie year. That's not good, guys. That's really bad. That's not something that you want to see. Also, something worth noting here, one pick on the year, 4 turnover-worthy plays. So the interception numbers really aren't even that accurate. He's kind of fortunate in that regard, but that's where we are right now. He is arguably playing worse in some ways than he did as a rookie, because I at least remember as a rookie when he played in Houston that he threw for 3 touchdowns. Now, yeah, he had a lot of interceptions, but he was moving the ball. We didn't get to the end of the game where your last 2 drives before the, lateral galore play at the very end of the game, he didn't even get the ball past his own 30-yard line. But that's where we are right now, right? And once again, I gotta make this clear, we're not sitting here and saying that Trevor Lawrence is the only problem on this team. That would be insane to say. And I think for a lot of people right now, why there's so much, like, just, I'll just call it arguing on Twitter, on any kind of social media platform about Jacksonville, is because it would be convenient for me as a fan if I could say, this is the problem. The problem, right? Not a problem, but the problem. Whether that's Trevor Lawrence, Shad Khan, Doug Pederson, Trent Baalke, Christian Kirk, whatever you want to throw out. But it's just simply not the case. There is no one solution to fixing this. There are a lot of things that have to be done, and there are a lot of people who are really playing themselves out of a career in the NFL at this point with the way they're going. And not just the players, but the coaches as well. Well, this is kind of where we are at this point. Another thing to note on Lawrence that was really frustrating, and we'll get into his interview later, that will be another thing to note, had a lot of misses today. We talked about the accuracy rate, which is hovering right now around 53% on the season. It is updated here, 53.3%. That's really low. His QB rating is second lowest he's had in his career. But Trevor Lawrence missing a lot of plays. A lot of deep shots today, too. Plays that should have been touchdowns, right? We're getting into situations where we're actually having a chance now. Like, we were gifted by a Houston Texans team that did not look anything like it was supposed to. A Houston Texans team that could not stop committing penalties all game. 12 penalties on the game. That's a lot. We could not overcome that. We could not do it because we don't have the players stepping up in the big moments. Now, getting to some other guys. Bigsby had a good day. Had 90 yards rushing on 7 carries. That's great. Came almost all off of 1 carry where the team made sure to reward him by turning over the ball after a first and goal sequence. Couldn't score. But that's what they do, right? Can't run the ball up the middle in the red zone. Can't score like that. And apparently we can't throw. So that's your obvious result. And for Travis Etienne, not a whole lot to note there, honestly. Not like some super impressive day, but also not a terrible day. 4.5 yard average, 11 carries, 50 yards. It is becoming a lot more of a split backfield than what it was before. I will say that. Tank Bigsby is carving out a role, and he's carving out a role for fair reasons. It's not like he's not played well at all. Now, getting into the receiving core here, you'll see Brian Thomas Jr., once again, the leading receiver for the Jaguars, having another good day, right? Just had a really good start to his career in Jacksonville. And you can finally see them trying to get him more involved. 6 receptions, 86 yards, had a touchdown. You also see Christian Kirk finally getting into the game plan. He got to a little bit last week, but another solid performance, not anything that's incredible, but at least starting to contribute. What has been so weird, though, about watching Christian Kirk get targets is it's almost if they think he's the contested catch guy. I have seen far too many times this year a player that in no way, shape, or form has been a contested catch guy in his career be thrown up to in double coverage or tight coverage down the field in situations where he is not good. I do not understand it. It's beyond me, but I have seen it far too much from this team at this point, and I'm tired of seeing it. Now, what else am I going to note here? 19 yards, 10 yards, 0 yards, -2, -5. Combination of 22 yards for these other players. There's nothing else in that room right now. Gabe Davis, 1 reception for -2 yards. You know, and I'm not even saying he, like, sucks or anything. I haven't watched enough of him to honestly have a deep opinion on him. But that's not what you paid him for. I'll tell you that. Yeah, I think you actually paid him to be the deep threat, big play guy, but that's what Christian Kirk's for, apparently. Now, getting to the offensive line, this is actually the one thing that I can compliment today. Did a pretty solid job. Now, still can't run the ball up the middle in the red zone. It's always been a problem. Apparently, it will always be a problem. But 1 sack allowed on the day. It's a really good game for this offensive line, given that they have not played anywhere near that level throughout the season. I think we're starting to see them kind of calm down, start to gel together, and maybe that means something good for this team. You know, as if that mattered, like the season was not borderline over at 0-4. And borderline, probably don't even need to say that. It's pretty much over. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, just going to note a couple things quick. Not going to go too in-depth on it. But Ventrell Miller had a really good day. Seven tackles, 3 assists, really involved, had some big plays. Did a really good job of stepping in for the linebacker core. Now, does that mean I'm sitting here like, all right, Devin Lloyd, you're a backup? No. Ventrell Miller should absolutely get into the rotation more. Like, I think he's capable of being put on the field for sure. And we know Nielsen's going to rotate a lot of guys, but, you know, we also got to be realistic here and not just say, you know what, screw our starters that have been pretty good, right? This is one of the better linebacker rooms in the NFL. Thanks, Trent Baalke, for the one thing he did, even if it cost us at a lot of other positions. But good game from Ventrell Miller. The defensive line, Roy Robertson Harris and Jeremiah Ledbetter, obviously the 2 best players on the defense, as y'all know. Each got a sack. Josh Allen, no sacks today. He was hurt, though. I believe somewhere in the 3rd quarter, got a concussion. And then Trayvon Walker had 1 assist, not really any kind of impact outside of that was noticeable during the game. In the secondary, look, they're missing a lot of people right now. And so, yeah, they didn't have a great game. They struggled a little bit, but that's kind of expected at this point. These are not really starters out on the field. There's some that are. Some that may not need to be long term. We'll have to see with Antonio Johnson at this point if he's able to turn things around. Obviously involved as a tackler today, but it's just been a rough season for him. And Andre Sisco, I know, has really struggled as a tackler this year. So, with that all said, because there's a lot more big things to talk about here, let's get into the post-game press conferences. One of them being among the funniest I've seen with Doug Pederson. He honestly just looks done with it. One of the things he did, the first thing I noticed that was funny was him scoffing at the idea of his job maybe not being super secure after this game. And while he had a competitive team today, we got to know, once again, muffed punt, right? Like, that's still involved in this. The offense had 1 scoring drive aside from field goals. This was not some great offensive performance, but of course, you know, he said it was. He said Press Taylor did a phenomenal job. He was great, you know. What do you even say about that, right? Not that he's terrible all the time, but, I mean, this is just the same stuff we hear all the time. We hear about the offense being fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And yet they're sitting here with this being their highest score in 4 games, 20 points. It's not good enough. But yeah, getting back to the press conference here, scoffing at a reporter and acting confused about job security was pretty funny to see. He also threw his players under the bus. Said Press Taylor called a great game, and that's a 2-way street. Players can also be at fault. And I get that, yeah, it's not all on the coaches. It's not all on the players. But that does not mean that we sit here and blame it all on one of them. You know, like, you're saving your own ass and then throwing your guys into the fire? Is that a good idea? Is that going to resonate well with the locker room? And I don't know if he tried to turn it around with the whole, like, acting like the media just wants to point fingers, the personal attack, and that they just need to point at him. He could take it, right? He could take it all. That's what he told him. I can take it. Cringe. There's nothing else I can say except cringe at that. But maybe he was just trying to, you know, get the players' attention onto the media. Maybe they're the enemy. I don't know. But bizarre press conference from him. And then the end of it, maybe the best part here, the reporter that had asked him about play calling, which caused the whole, you know, coaching really isn't the problem, it's the players, talk from Doug Pederson. He was asked about the coaching a little bit more, maybe given some thoughts to consider. It's kind of hard to hear what was being said, but Doug Pederson just looks at the guy, says, yeah, I'll take that into consideration. And then whenever they say the press conference is over, rolls his eyes so everyone can see. Wasn't like some small thing or a debatable thing, just so you can all see, right? He's upset with getting asked questions about his 0-4 start with the best team ever assembled in Jaguars history, and then storms off the stage. Doug Pederson's lost this team. I don't care if this was 24-20 today. I mean, I remember the 2020 Jaguars still had close games. They went 1-16. Or sorry, 1-15. This is not a team that is being led well. It ultimately has to come down large part to him. He's having many of the same issues he had in Philadelphia, if not the exact same. We talked about that last week. And we're on a track right now where, I'll say this now, if you asked me what's going to happen next week, I told you what I realistically think, just as most likely. I think next year might be one of the most embarrassing moments in franchise history. We're playing at home against Indianapolis, beat them there for over a decade, wearing throwback uniforms as an 0-4 team. Cancel the damn things. Honestly, I know we've waited for a long time. Cancel. If we're 0-4 and we look like shit, are we really going to just embarrass the legacy of this team because we can't admit when we're wrong? Cancel the damn uniforms. But we're going to go out there next weekend. We're going to pretend everything's fine, be arrogant. You know, what we did this week was good enough. And we'll go get our asses handed to us by Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson or whoever it is. And maybe that'll be the end. Maybe it won't. Depends on how quickly Shad Khan wants to come to terms with reality. It's going to be hard for him because this will end up easily being the worst take he's ever had on this team, saying it was the best coaches and the best players ever in Jacksonville. Better than 99. This team isn't even going to come close to the playoffs. They might be eliminated before December, but they're better than 99. Makes sense. But that's the track we're on. This might be the most embarrassing week in franchise history. It's possible. I hope it's not, but we're on that track. Now, getting off of Doug Pederson, because I'll tell you this right now, as much crap as I can give Doug Pederson, as much as I can give Trent Baalke here as well, maybe we'll talk about him this week, I don't care a whole ton to spend all of my time on it or to call them out necessarily on like Twitter and such, because at this point, there is a limited amount of time they're here, right? Like, there's going to be change. There's no way around that. This team is 0-4 in what was supposed to be their best season in franchise history. 0-4. They aren't surviving that. They're going to be fired. It's going to be a matter of when they're going to be fired. That's all it's going to come down to. So I could bash them, and I will a little bit because they deserve it, and it has to be talked about to some extent. But I'm not necessarily going to spend all my time talking about just them because they are a short-term problem. What is a long-term problem is, for one, the decision-maker, Shad Khan, because he's going to choose the people who replace Doug Pederson and Trent Baalke. We'll see if he decides that it's time to bring in another in-house person, right? Because our organization, that's the laughing stock of the NFL, is apparently so good that we only hire from within. And not that I'm trying to bash everyone in that organization. There's guys I don't know a whole lot about. Maybe someone is better than what we think, right? But it's not a smart way of running an organization that is bad. You need to figure out external solutions to these problems. We'll see if Shad Khan does that, or maybe he'll hire an old head coach that will just ignore the baggage they bring and pretend it's not real. We'll see. But the other one that we have to talk about, the guy we started on, is Trevor Lawrence. There's a lot we talked about with just his performance on the field. Now, 2 weeks ago, I remember recording my recap of the Browns game, and I kind of left it on a good note with Trevor Lawrence. It may not have sounded like it, but one of the things I said was that I felt like Trevor Lawrence was finally getting to a point where he's actually angry about what's happening on the field. Then maybe he's going to do something about it. Just at least his own performance, right? I understand if the team is so bad around him that they can't possibly win. I don't think that's the case, but I think that this team is obviously far away from competing for a Super Bowl or even being a playoff contender at this point. But I was inspired a bit by Lawrence's comments, and I wanted to see how he performed after that. Well, come into Buffalo game. Beaten the ever-living shit out of on national television. Embarrassed in front of everyone. Scrutinized, called into the light, questioned about his contract, not by the media, but just NFL fans wondering what the hell is going on. And then this week, same kind of crap. Just a boring mid-game at best from Trevor Lawrence at this point. That's what we're getting. It's not what we want, but this is what we're getting. And I watched that interview after, and it made me mad. Because it's uninspiring. It's just even-tempered, like, you know, we had a good game plan, did fine, gave ourselves opportunities. And when talking about missing passes, it's like, what's going to happen in football? You're going to miss some passes. I just got to make more of them. How many quarterbacks tell themselves, I just need to make more passes, and that's great, right? That's where I'm going to settle at. How many quarterbacks are telling themselves, instead, maybe I try to make every damn pass because I should set the bar high? You're paid $55 million a year, and you're setting the bar at, let's just have a good completion rate. Because to grow just a little bit from 53% is not really that impressive, right? It's not like we're talking about, let's go from great to elite. He's not playing at a good level at all right now. And we're sitting here with him, like, just saying, oh, yeah, we'll just get a little bit better next week. It's like you're miles off from where you need to be. It hurts, right? Because they made their decision as early as they could on Trevor Lawrence. I understand it from the perspective of you want to try to give him confidence, but I still think there are far, far more reasons why you do not do that extension. I put my opinion out there. I said I wouldn't have extended him. Now, with that said, like, what was the best case scenario going to be? Obviously, if you extend him now and he plays great, hey, you got a good quarterback, right? And you got him as cheap as you possibly could. But if he doesn't, we do not go into this offseason and say, you know what, Trevor wasn't the guy, that sucks. I guess we'll just release him. Or I guess we'll trade him. I don't think you can do that. You got to find a team that wants to pay him $55 million a year now. We're quite close to that. That's the only way. And you got to also have the organization be real with itself if it gets to that point. I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now that we have the 100% final verdict on Trevor Lawrence. But that's the whole reason why there shouldn't have been a decision made. Because we do not know yet. And because they wanted to believe it, and because you had an owner and a GM and a head coach that would have been fired if Trevor Lawrence wasn't the guy, they have every incentive to extend him now because there's no reason not to for them. And they convince the owner who wants to believe in him. What's going to be the outcome, right? Early extension, paying him every freaking penny that he wants when he hasn't earned it up to this point. It's all off of promise. It's all off of what he could be. And he's still not that, and in fact, is getting worse. And then you see these interviews, and it's just like, oh, we're doing all right. You know, I'm happy we did better. I'm not saying, these are paraphrases, and some of it's not stuff that he necessarily said, but it's the general vibe that you're getting. We've all seen it from Trevor Lawrence. It's okay. You know, it's not a big deal. It's got to change. I don't know how you can stand at the podium when your team's 0-4 and you're the leader of that team, of the players, and you're just cool with it. It's fine. But we're at a point as a franchise right now, we're at the bare minimum, regardless of how you feel about Trevor Lawrence, we have to have some serious doubt about his ability to elevate the franchise around him. And regardless of who you want to blame, right? Because that's where a lot of people go with this. It's like, if Trevor Lawrence isn't good, well, I don't want to blame Trevor Lawrence. I want to blame the head coach. I want to blame the GM or the owner or whoever it is. I understand that, right? And I'm not even sitting here saying that this is all Trevor Lawrence's fault. I think it falls on a lot of people, but mostly on the organization. Even saying that, it does not change the fact of who the player is. And we have to hope and we have to pray, regardless of what a record is this year or any of that. Doesn't matter at this point, because this year was always about getting answers to the problems, or the questions, we'll say. We have to see Trevor Lawrence play at a high level, not average, a high level. And he's not even average right now. If we don't see that, this is the long-term problem. I will be having a lot of birthdays before we're going to fix that problem. And you guys will too. So that's pretty much all I've got for this one, though. Want to give a shout out to our channel members, Premier Nasir from our Till We Die rank, Mr. Dolphin on the prowl, and everyone else. If you guys want to join the channel, more than welcome to. You don't have to, but you can see the perks here, the costs. This is all monthly. Would love to get more people on, but it's been a blast. Let me know your thoughts. You know, am I being a little too harsh here? I probably am. Just what do you think about all this, right? It could be Trevor Lawrence, it could be Doug Pederson, it could be the game. I think a lot of people need to be able to vent about it and talk about it, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. So, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Sunday night. And finally, go Jags.